Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is REGANELITE. Hello, everyone. Welcome to a Prime Minister's Questions, Snowflake on Prime Minister's Questions, where we cover Prime Minister's questions and give our response to it. How are you guys all doing? Hope you're doing well. The date and time for this PMQ is the 16th of October 2024 at 12 noon UK time. Ben Shaw and Aki Smag, good to see you both here on the live YouTube chat, also on twitch.tv/REGANELITE1. This is also available on Twitch as well there. It should be starting any moment. The Prime Minister has already sat down, so we should be switching over in just a moment, any moment now. Let me just adjust the settings for you guys. I will be back this evening as well with a live stream as well. Mad Monk, good to see you there, buddy. Hope you're doing well. So yes, it's I missed obviously last week's one completely, so we'll have to see. So I don't know really too much about last week's one because obviously I was on holiday, and I've missed quite a lot of things this morning because I've just been trying to record. Oh, never mind.
Dr. Danny Chambers.
Number one, Mr. Speaker.
Let's get going.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Alex Salmond was a monumental figure in Scottish and UK politics. He leaves a lasting legacy, and I know that the deepest condolences of the whole House are with Moira, his family, and his loved ones.
Amen.
Mr. Speaker, this week we also remember our colleague and friend, Sir David Amess, whose kindness and commitment to public service continues to inspire us all. And I know how deeply this was felt on the benches opposite, and I'm so glad that his plaque is here in the House with us. I also want to acknowledge the extraordinary life of Holocaust survivor Lily Ebert, whose message of hope showed such courage. May her memory be a blessing. Mr. Speaker, we also extend our sympathies to the family of General Sir Mike Jackson. He was an inspirational leader of the British Army and served with distinction. Mr. Speaker, I know the whole House will join me in wishing the best of luck to the new England manager, Thomas Tuchel. I won't hold his old job against him, but I wish him well in the new one. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others in addition to my duties in this House. I shall have further such meetings later today.
Dr. Danny Chambers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In last week's maternity services debate, we heard of the devastating impact of the removal of consultant-led maternity services from a hospital. Now, under the previous government's unfunded new hospital programme, there were proposals to remove consultant-led maternity services from our hospital in Winchester. Could the Prime Minister reassure me and my constituents that under the new government that consultant-led maternity services and A&E services will remain in Winchester, and will he commit to funding properly the backlog of maintenance that has developed in our hospital in Winchester?
Well, I thank him for raising this very important issue and for championing the voices of women in his constituency. We are committed to ensuring that all women and babies receive safe, compassionate and personalised care through pregnancy, birth and critical following months. Reconfiguration of the services, as he knows, is a matter for the integrated care boards, important as it allows decisions to be made locally and tailored to local interests. But all changes should be based on evidence, clinically led, and involve engagement with patients to ensure they'll deliver better outcomes. It's a very important issue.
Alison Moon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Whitby Interactive has provided inclusive play schemes and holiday activities for children and young people with special educational needs and disabilities for 26 years. It has been a lifeline for families continually failed by Conservative governments. But Interactive is set to close due to a funding shortfall. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that action to tackle the crisis in SEND provision is urgently needed and that charities like Interactive deserve our support more than ever?
Yes, I do, and I know this will be a concerning time for families who rely on the brilliant work of Whitby Interactive. Children with special educational needs and disabilities have been failed for too long, and this comes up repeatedly in this House, with parents struggling to get their children the support that they need and that they deserve. We must raise the standards for every child so they can succeed in education. We will fix the foundations, Mr. Speaker, and ensure every child can achieve their potential.
It's going to take time for the childcare to get them what they need. Chatty Rat and Ginny Ball, good to see you both. Hope you're doing well.
Leader of the opposition, Rishi Sunak.
Can I join with the Prime Minister's words of tribute to Alex Salmond and the Holocaust survivor Lily Ebbert, and thank him for his kind words about Sir David Amess. We remember him fondly, and we will be thinking of all their families at this moment. Mr. Speaker, this week, China has carried out unwarranted, aggressive and intimidatory military exercises in the Taiwan Strait. Our allies are rightly concerned. After worrying reports that the government may have intervened to stop a visit to the UK by the former Taiwanese president, can the Prime Minister confirm that the Foreign Secretary will use his meetings in Beijing this week to condemn China's dangerous escalatory acts in the Strait?
That's going to be very dangerous for Debbie Lowy to do in Beijing, shall we say. But this is, for those who don't know, this is the reference, obviously. China have been, the extensive drills that China have been doing around Taiwan, completely around Taiwan, caused a bit of an uproar, obviously. The US and the Philippines have been conducting exercises literally the very next day. This was already planned before the drills that were done by China as well, just to add the context there as well.
I thank him for his question. The continued military activity in the Strait is not conducive to peace and stability in the Taiwan Straits is in all of our interest. On the wider point that he raises, we will cooperate where we can as permanent members of the UN Security Council, issues like net zero, health and trade, compete where we have different interests, but challenge, the point he makes is absolutely right, where it's needed, to protect national security, human rights and our values, and we will put that challenge in.
Sunak.
Well, given what the Prime Minister said, and I agree, of course we must engage, and we should use that engagement for our national interests. I hope that the Foreign Secretary will unequivocally condemn this military escalation and stand up for democracy in Taiwan. Now, the whole House will be concerned about the fate of the democracy campaigner Jimmy Lai. He is a British citizen who has been wrongly imprisoned in Hong Kong for 4 years. The previous government pressured China for his release. Does the Prime Minister agree that this is a politically motivated prosecution and that it is a breach of China's legal obligations to Hong Kong under the Sino-British Declaration?
Yeah.
What we gave away Hong Kong. What's happening? I just want to state this. What's happening in Hong Kong is a direct result of us giving it back to China. When that agreement was struck with China and Hong Kong, I generally I felt like there was a clock. There's literally a clock ticking. I think it's like I think it's still got several years before China can have more control on the deal. If someone can remind me in the chat, but yeah, I've like the changes that have already been made in Hong Kong. You know, the so-called democracy is ebbing away in Hong Kong as we speak. But obviously, this is a specific case. I'm not too familiar enough on this case to speak on it.
Yes, and this case, as he will understand, is a priority for the government. We do call on the Hong Kong authorities to release immediately our British national, and the Foreign Secretary raised this case in his first meeting with China's Foreign Minister, and we will continue to do so.
Rishi Sunak.
I thank the Prime Minister for that answer. Now, China, as he knows, has become a decisive enabler of Russia's war against Ukraine, supplying the vast majority now of Russia's imported military microelectronics and components, worsening the suffering of the Ukrainian people. So can the Prime Minister confirm that he is prepared to sanction any Chinese business or individual involved in aiding Russia's invasion of Ukraine, including secondary sanctions on financial institutions?
Yes, and we've called for that in the past. We continue to do so, and I hope this is an issue where we can have unity across the House.
Rishi Sunak.
Yes, I can assure the Prime Minister of his support. It is something that we began. The United States recently have expanded their sanctions, and I hope that the new government will continue to look at doing the same. Now, the last government also established a new system of registration and monitoring to protect the UK from interference from foreign states, including China, Russia and Iran. Called the Foreign Influence Registration Scheme, it was described as essential by MI5 in the fight to help keep Britain safe. But since the Prime Minister took office, he has halted its implementation. Why?
That isn't correct.
Rishi Sunak.
Yeah, well, Mr. Speaker, that is very clearly what the government has said. And only last week he said at the dispatch box that he would give the security forces the powers they need. And if he is going to fulfil that promise, I would urge him to get up to speed on this issue and therefore implement the scheme. Furthermore, Parliament's Intelligence and Security Committee have warned that British universities are increasingly a rich feeding ground for China to exert political influence over.
We've heard about, so for those who don't know, I've covered some of these stories around the influence that China's had on our universities. There have been several exclusives from the Eye that have covered this tracks, as well as one or two other outlets that have covered this as well. I was very surprised by Keir Starmer's last answer there. I was taken a bit back from that. I'm not sure how you guys felt about it. That was quite, I was quite taken a bit back, from his response there, just literally saying, no, it isn't. Very, very short.
Over us. That's why we passed the Freedom of Speech Act with new powers to help defend universities from this threat, but the new Education Secretary has since blocked it. So can the Prime Minister tell us how, without this tool, the government will prevent Chinese influence over our universities?
Because your freedom of speech bill wasn't actually going to make any... Your freedom of speech bill is designed to... wasn't going to protect universities. That's not what it was doing. It was trying to it was trying to mitigate certain discussions that students want to have that your political party didn't want.
I really don't think party political points on security and intelligence. Honestly, throughout the last Parliament, we stood with the government on all questions of security and intelligence because it was important to the outside world that we did so. I worked with the security and intelligence services for 5 years prosecuting cases. I know firsthand the work that they do as a lawyer. I've known firsthand the work they do as the Prime Minister. We support them in everything that we do, and he knows that.
Yes, we also know your dad was a toolmaker as well. Hi, Mr. Keir. Good to see you, buddy. Can we ask China and Russia to behave? He can't even do anything about Israel, and we help create it. Delude to think China or Russia will listen to our tiny little island suspension. Yeah, it won't. It was not going to make an impact at all. Super Tiny, good to see you there. I hope you're doing well.
Rishi Sunak.
Mr. Speaker, whether it's the FIRS scheme or the Freedom of Speech Act, these were new tools, new sets of powers that the previous government passed in order to give, whether it's our universities or security services, the powers they need to tackle a growing threat. And we will, of course, continue to support the government in protecting our national security, but do believe on this side of the House that those tools are needed and are concerned by reports that the new government has paused their implementation or indeed scrapped them. But finally, Mr. Speaker, the Chinese government has sanctioned multiple members of our parliament for championing human rights. As a result, they have faced intimidation, abuse and surveillance. And Mr. Speaker, I commend you for your defence of the right of every member of this House to speak out on crucial issues without fear of retaliation from foreign states. Now, I know the Prime Minister will agree with that too. So this week, will the Foreign Secretary in his meetings not just raise the issue, but tell the Chinese government to lift those sanctions on our colleagues?
Yes, and we speak with one voice. He speaks about the record of the last government. That record was 14 years of failure. 6 years austerity, 3 years of Brexit logjam.
Here we go, bash the Tories. But I have like he can keep using this because it's a tool he has. They can't say nothing. The Conservatives really.
Then Johnson Trust and the leader of the opposition, utter failure. And this government was elected to do things differently, to make fairer choices, but most importantly, to give Britain its future back.
You were we elected. You guys got in because we didn't want the blue team.
So we will fix the foundations. We'll do it with a long-term plan to grow our economy, protect working people, and rebuild our country.
Jane Craft.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 2 years ago, Thurrock Council was led into effective bankruptcy by the then Conservative administration, in no small part due to an investment of hundreds of millions of pounds into a solar farm scheme run by a con man. Given the Prime Minister's commitment to integrity in public life, will he support mine and my constituents' calls for a public inquiry so that those responsible can finally be held to account?
I would like that.
I thank her for her question because years of underfunding have left councils facing huge budget pressures. They yawn. They don't know the impact it has on working people up and down the country. They rely on public services, and what's happened in Thurrock is shocking. We are committed to resetting the relationship and helping those under intervention to recover and to reform. 14 years is a long time to destroy local services, and it's clear it'll take time to fix them. We will get councils back on their feet by providing multi-year funding settlements. But ultimately, we have to grow our economy, and I'm surprised the Prime Minister didn't welcome the £63 billion of investment that we were able to announce on Monday.
He means meant to say former Prime Minister there, but he didn't agree to a public inquiry. I will just point that out there on that.
Leader of the Liberal Democrats, Sir Ed Davey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I echo the tributes to the Prime Minister, to Alex Salmond, to Sir David Amess and to Lily Ebbott? And can I welcome the news that ministers are going to review the carers allowance repayment scandal after campaigns by carers organisations, the Guardian newspaper and the Liberal Democrats, culminating in our motion on the order paper today. But will he agree with me that the evidence needed for the review is already long established and many of the decisions self-evident? So will he and his colleagues vote for our motion today so we can write off the overpayments, we can end the crazy cliff edge to the earnings limit now, and have a fuller review for the support that carers deserve?
I don't think he's going to say yes. I don't think he's going to say yes on that. But obviously it's a step in the right direction. I'm pleased that the campaigns have done well. I generally just hope that it like was said earlier, like things are going to take time. If Labour are generally going to fix the UK, if we are to believe that, and I totally understand the scepticism around Labour, and I've seen plenty of that too. It's going to take time, but if we don't see those changes over the next couple of years, we will know exactly what kind of party the Labour government is.
I thank him for raising this. This is obviously a really important issue affecting a number of people, and that's why we've launched an independent review into the carers allowance overpayments to look at the circumstances of the overpayments, to see what went wrong and therefore what can be done to put it right, because carers must get the support that they deserve. So I'm grateful for him for raising it. I'm glad that we've been able to take this action today to go forward on a really important issue.
He didn't answer the question there. QA Library, good to see you there, buddy. Portsmouth Council was asked to join the solar panel park and also supply of power. It would have cost the council £45 million in losses as a supply company at about another £35 million. That's insane. That under Penny Mordaunt's watch as well. She was the MP at the time. Absolute.
David.
Can I thank the Prime Minister for that answer and ask him that ministers in the review will listen to the voices of carers throughout. Can I turn to the Middle East now? Israeli Finance Minister Smotrich had said that starving 2 million people in Gaza might be justified and moral. National Security Minister Ben-Gvir called settlers who killed a 19-year-old on the West Bank heroes. After my visit to Israel and Palestine last February, having witnessed the damage that these extremist ministers in the Netanyahu government are doing, I called on the last government to sanction them. The last government refused, but we now learn that the former Foreign Secretary was considering this. So will the Prime Minister now sanction Ministers Ben-Gvir and Smotrich?
Absolutely. These vile, disgusting animals, and I'm going to call them vile, disgusting animals, who are within the Israeli government. I know we want to pretty much shade the whole Israel government because of their extreme views and their actions that they have inflicted and pushing the IDF to do, and the atrocities that there has been caused inside Gaza. Over 42,000 Palestinians have lost their lives. Over 90% of buildings have been destroyed. Many men, women, and children are still missing under the rubbles. Nearly all hospitals and schools have been targeted by Israeli airstrikes, with claims from the IDF, the Israel Defense Force, that they have been Hamas command centers, with no evidence whatsoever provided by them. Brutal beatings as well have been on some Palestinians, and by Palestinians who have been detained by the IDF. I recently got a story I covered today that will be coming out on Rumble this week about how Palestinians have been used as human shields. Not Hamas people, Palestinians, let's talk about specifically, being used as human shields, being forced to go in, forced to go ahead, being used in front of tanks, being forced to use as literally as dogs or drones to scour ahead, to check tunnels, to check certain rooms and buildings, so that if they die, it's them that loses their life and not IDF soldiers. Disgusting and immoral. And here's the worst thing about it, right? It's actually in Israeli law that they should not be using as human shields, but apparently they still do it, as well as obviously international law as well.
We are looking at that because they're obviously abhorrent comments, as he rightly says, along with other really concerning activity in the West Bank, but also across the region. The humanitarian situation in Gaza is dire. The death toll has surpassed 42,000.
I just want to point this out here in the chat, out this as well, because this will be dropping in a shorts video as well, just regards to the Gaza the situation in terms of aid. So there's been a story banging around that the US are threatening, quote unquote, I'm going to say quote unquote, guys, maybe threatening to withdraw or reduce the amount of military aid to Israel unless it increases its aid into Gaza. I'm taking that with a massive pinch of salt, because we've heard empty threats from the US before about pressuring Israel to allow more humanitarian aid into Gaza, but that story has been banged around over the last, I think it's since yesterday and today as well, guys.
And access to basic services is becoming much harder, and Israel must take all possible steps to avoid civilian casualties, to allow aid into Gaza in much greater volume, and provide the UN and humanitarian partners the ability to operate effectively. Mr. Speaker, along with France, the UK will convene an urgent meeting of the UN Security Council to address this.
Lyndon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's been an honour to meet my constituent, Tom Morton, a young person in care who sat in the public gallery today and cares so deeply about politics and communities. Young people in care are at a disproportionate risk of criminal and cynical exploitation by drug barons through county lines. Will the Prime Minister tell Tom and the House what steps the government will take to prevent vulnerable children in care becoming involved in county line operations?
Well, we need to make sure that we're actually recruiting the right people for those jobs and not just pushing people into the care sector against their will, such as getting them off benefits just so that they can have a job. We need to make sure that we have people who want to care for others and have that desire and need the desire for it and have a passion for it as well. What we don't want is to get people who are struggling, who are on benefits right now, who are incapable or do have some disabilities or disadvantages so that they may or may not be clearly having, that they're unable to get back to work and being pushed by in any way, shape or form back into work, or indeed worse, could be the care sector. I don't think the Labour would be cruel enough to do that. However, it is entirely plausible that that can happen. The other problem as well is that when it comes to the amount of workers in the care sector, like many other sectors, obviously, of course, because we're no longer part of the Single Market and Customs Union, which means that we cannot rely on workers from Europe, which means we have to rely on workers from outside the EU. That's coming from Asia, coming from Africa, from India. So we're getting people from those are coming in to take on those roles, because quite simply we're not training enough of our own staff. We just don't have enough of our own people to fill the vacancies that we have here, in particularly here in England.
Well, can I welcome Tom to this House? It's encouraging to see young people engaging in democracy. County lines is a real problem, and all of us will have experienced the effect and impact of that in our constituencies. And our County Lines programme focuses on preventing young people being exploited and lured into criminal gangs, which is far too common, and committed to introduce a new offence of child criminal exploitation, long overdue. We will also create a network of young future hubs, staffed with professional youth workers, mental health support workers and career advisors, to provide focused support for young people, helping them to fulfil their ambitions and preventing them being drawn into crime.
I like that idea, and I really hope that they are not just empty words, that there is funding going to come to some kind of this children's hubs that the Prime Minister has spoken of, because I really do think, especially community centres and whatnot, they must be protected in communities to allow young people to have a safe place to go to. These community centres are so vital for the future of children, and I hope that this proposal that the Prime Minister has is in conjunction with protecting these community hubs, and also rebuilding and re-establishing ones that were closed down because of the austerity that we went that we are going through as a result of the 14 years of Conservatives as well.
Savile Roberts.
Iawn, Lefaredd, and Plaid Cymru too would like to pay tribute to Alex Salmond and Sir David Amess. Mr Speaker, 1 in 5 people in Wales is on an NHS waiting list. The Secretary of State for Wales says that a new cross-border NHS plan would bring down Welsh surgery waiting lists. But the First Minister of Wales, Labour, contradicts her. She denies it has anything to do with bringing down waiting lists. Are they making it up as they go along?
Now, obviously, Welsh politics I don't have quite much of an eye on here as she does. I will just say this though: Wales has had a much worse crisis in the National Healthcare Service than England does. Scotland has the better healthcare service out of the 3 nations. I will say that, but it is in a very difficult situation. It has been in a very difficult situation for some time now. It's very easy for people to finger point at Labour, because they have been in pretty much in control of the seat and of Wales for quite a long period as well. But you can't you have to take into account, when criticising the Welsh Labour government in particular, or administration as you want to call it, you have to take into account the funding that they have been receiving for the healthcare in Wales, and how much funding they have been getting under the 14 years of Conservative rule as well, and that has also played a hampering effect on it. I think that there may have been poor management potentially, as well as contributing factor to that as well. But yeah, I do believe that there are lots of factors to it. So I do want to stress that while I can understand the criticism towards the Welsh administration for not getting a better grip on the NHS in Wales, ultimately, when it comes down to funding, the funding as well is also, I think, is a key factor in that as well, and that's ultimately down to Westminster there. Now, also as well, we have had over 100 days now as a Labour government, but we also have to bear in mind, as QA Library pointed out in one of the comments on one of my videos, is that we've had a long recess. Labour are still trying to get embedded in. There are So there was a long recess as well, obviously because of the timing of the election. So we do have to give a little bit of benefit of the doubt to this Labour government, but I think the budget will speak quite volumes as well on that. QA Library says Welsh NHS has been an issue since 1999, if not before, and it's gone a whole lot worse under the old government. That's a major issue. If it's been like that since 1999, there needs to be some sorting out then. My community centre was built for wartime. It was used for a few activities, says Jeannie Bottle. RAP Bingo, RAP Fitness, RAP Tea Times, Christmas fairs and craft sales by local RAPs to sell and polling day. That's community centres I still feel are very, very important, but I can also understand and putting them into hubs sort of thing, rather than having its own structural building as well in some areas as well, in terms of a cost effective as well. Alistair Keir says Northern Ireland has had the worst NHS because of the DUP not going into their parliament. That's a very fair point, Alistair. Very good point.
The difference is this: we now have a Westminster government that wants to work with the Welsh government to deliver for the people of Wales. For 14 long years, the Welsh government was in a position where the then government was in conflict with them. So now we will work together, collaborate, and ensure that together we deliver across Wales.
Obviously, there's not going to get a clear answer from that question anyway, and just blaming the Conservatives is an easy cop-out, for the Prime Minister. But I don't really know what more to add, really, with that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, join me in praising our Labour Police and Crime Commissioner for Cleveland, Matt Story, who's working with me to tackle knife crime, drug crime and antisocial behaviour in Stockton North, and assure my constituents that under this Labour government we'll see more police officers in Stockton and Billingham.
Well, I welcome his work with the new Labour Police and Crime Commissioner. And it's sad to say that in Cleveland, full-time equivalent police officers fell by over 12% under the last government. When you fail on the economy and growth, those are the types of things that happen across the country. As part of our neighbourhood policing guarantee, we'll put 13,000 more neighbourhood police and PCSOs back on our streets and ensure every community has a named local officer. Through our Safer Streets mission, we will tackle illegal drugs, half-knife crime and crack down on antisocial behaviour and go after the gangs that lure young people into violence.
It all sounds very good stuff, but whether it will come to fruition is another thing there. Jeannie Bottle says, I've seen kids' centres all close in my area. It has led to kids hanging around shops, some causing trouble, bored. They've got nowhere to go. If they have nothing at home, they've got nowhere to go. They're gonna easily turn to crime. They're gonna turn to a life of crime or violence or just do some, because kids are full of energy. They need to use that energy, David Gerardo, good to see you there. Hope you're doing well.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As evidenced by some earlier questions, issues surrounding SEND, local government finance and adult social care are issues which affect all of our constituents. And let's be honest, Mr. Speaker, for too long, both parties have ducked and dodged taking the difficult but necessary decisions.
Both parties, he says there.
In order to give certainty to our constituents and confidence to those who provide those vital services, does the Prime Minister share my assessment that there is considerable merit in formal cross-party working on these issues, where we can share taking those difficult decisions in order to improve outcomes for our constituents?
What kind of sharing was you giving to the Labour opposition when you guys were in power? Did you share anything with them, or did you just push them aside and do whatever you want as well? It's funny. It's very funny now that they sit in opposition asking for more cooperation when they were lacking the giving the cooperation with Labour when they were. And plus, Labour have a 400 over 400 MPs. They don't need the Conservatives.
Well, I am grateful to him for raising this question about SEND, because it is a really important issue, and I think this is the fourth time in two Prime Minister's questions where it's been raised on both sides of the House. I quibble with his suggestion it's both parties, since his party was in power for 14 years. But the spirit in which he puts this forward, that this should be cross-party, is something that we should take up, because it's such an important issue. It affects so many children and parents, and therefore, notwithstanding the quibble, I'm very happy to work across the House on an issue as important as this.
Katrina Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Fairways Networking Group, a group of small businesses in my constituency of Cumbernauld and Kirkintilloch, all operate on tight margins. Can my right honourable friend help me reassure this group that not only do they have nothing to fear from the Employment Rights Bill, but they have plenty to gain as exemplar employers?
Yes, the Employment Rights Bill is pro-worker and pro-growth, and proudly so. And I don't believe you can build a strong economy by having people in insecure work. The party opposite, they go against every protection for workers. They're against the minimum wage, they're against these new protections. But the vast majority of businesses, large and small, already know that investing in your human capital, treating people properly at work, is what produces growth. So here's the big political divide. They always oppose workers' rights. We will always champion them.
Very good line.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I associate the Green Party with his tributes to Alex Salmond and Sir David Amess? 99.7% of new patients in the east of England are unable to find an NHS dentist, the worst affected area in the country. My constituents in Waveney Valley want urgent action. So when will the government begin the critical negotiations on dental contract reform so no one in the 21st century has to pull out their own teeth? And will it be by the end of this year?
Well, he raises a really important issue because dentistry was left in a shocking state by the last government. I was shocked to hear that for children's hospitals, the commonest cause for admission for 6 to 10-year-olds in our children's hospitals in this country is to have teeth taken out because of the failure of the last government. That is shocking on any analysis. We will put that right, we will take the necessary steps, and we'll work across the House to do this as quickly as possible.
But obviously you're not going to get a straightforward answer from the Prime Minister on that. But I do hope they get control of the dentist crisis, the dental crisis in England in particular. It's really, really bad. The kids are really suffering as a result. Like, he's saying the right things here. I just, like, for me, it's like, I hope they get to grips with this as quickly as possible. But like everything, guys, it's just going to take time. And I know the problem is people are very impatient, which is, I understand the impatience, but I really do hope they get to grips with it.
Dan Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last night in this House, we took the first steps in abolishing the hereditary principle of privilege in the place. I was hosting the Let's End Poverty Coalition at a meeting upstairs, where we heard that often for many who experience poverty, that feels hereditary too. So will the Prime Minister meet with me and those with lived experience of poverty to find ways in which we can hear from those with that lived experience to break that cycle of poverty?
Could start by removing the 2-child benefit cap at the budget. That would be a good start.
She makes a good point. The party opposite, they want to get rid of maternity pay, but keep hereditary peers. It's the same.
This is a great line. Can't argue that one.
Old Tories, but you know the letters. This is an important issue that she's raised. The letters are honest, powerful, and important, and I think they hold up a mirror to our country. We will deliver a budget that drives economic growth, improves the lives of working people, fixes our public services, and rebuilds our country with a decade of national renewal.
Diolch Llefarydd. My constituent Jeanette Crawford suffers from ME and chronic pain. The cold, damp conditions of a Welsh winter are going to mean a lot more muscle soreness and fatigue for her. She's lost her winter fuel payments due to having a very small savings pot. With 86% of pensioners in poverty or just above that line to miss out in Wales, will the Prime Minister establish a social energy tariff to help people like Jeanette?
On this issue of winter fuel payments, we have inherited a 20...
Please stop mentioning the fucking black hole, please. Yes, you get it, black hole. You said that 100,000 times. But you do. We've made this very, very clear that you did not need to change the winter fuel payments in any way, shape, or form. Someone is suffering. Someone may potentially die as a result of your actions on the winter fuel changes that you guys are making. This is a political choice, and you guys will suffer the consequences of it if so. It only takes one person to die as a direct action of the changes you guys are making to the winter fuel payments for it to be put all over the front pages with the headline, Labour kills pensioner. That's all they need to do.
A £22 billion black hole. They should be apologising, not groaning, for leaving the country in such a state. We are committed to the triple lock. The point about pensions is really important, and that means that the triple lock means that the pension will increase again by £460 next year, which means that pensioners under Labour will be better off because we're going to stabilise the economy after that lot lost control of it.
You didn't answer a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In Britain, the biggest killer of men under 50 is suicide. We have some of the worst paternity leave in Europe, and boys are 50% less likely than girls to pursue higher education. I know that my right honourable friend takes this very seriously, and his commitment on reducing suicide rates is very welcome. Can the Prime Minister update the House on this work, and does he agree with me that it is vital that we tackle these issues head-on because of the increasing alienation and mental health issues amongst young men?
Well said.
I thank him for raising this vital issue. The statistics on male suicide are truly shocking. I went to an event just a few years ago here in this place where everyone in attendance was asked if they had lost someone to suicide, and I then reflected on my own experience, which was profound. As it was, I could see, for everybody across the room, and will be across this House. So reducing deaths from suicide is a vital part of our health mission. We're recruiting an additional 8,500 mental health workers, specially trained to support people at risk of suicide, to provide faster treatment and ease pressure on our services.
There should be nobody questioning or arguing in any way, shape or form about the need to reducing suicide rates. I think it's absolutely shocking that we have such high levels of statistics. There is obviously, the WHO have said there has been a significant rise in suicides as well over the last several decades as well. I know the WHO had a report a while back on the rates of suicide have been increasing globally, not just here in the UK, sadly. And it is something that there shouldn't be any questions when it comes to funding and giving the help that healthcare's, not just here but around the world, they need, whether it's mental help, whatever it is, to get people the help that they possibly need when it comes to this situation. Every life is precious, and no one should have to take their own life, regardless of whatever their situation that they are in. Joe Lefty, good to see you there. I hope you're doing well. Bit awkward timing to come in as I'm talking about suicide, but I do think it's a very important, sensitive topic, especially when some of you guys who were there when I talked about my mental health struggles, and I do still have those mental health struggles, even though I don't always show it. It is something. So it is something that, especially on a subject such as this, I do take as a lot more personally. And I am pleased that Labour were talking about mental health before they came into power, and they're talking about mental health when they come into power. And I generally hope, as much as I despise Wes Streeting as the Health Secretary, I generally do hope he gets the grip on mental health and, of course, prevention of bringing down those suicide rates.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Group Captain Lizzie Nichol had an exemplary career with the RAF until she was forced to resign for refusing to implement illegal recruitment orders. Despite inquiry after inquiry vindicating Lizzie, on every count the RAF and MOD have failed to offer her fair compensation, and those responsible have walked away. Shamefully, during the Purdah election period, in what I believe was an attempt to subvert ministerial oversight, she was offered a derisory £2,000 by officials. I have documents proving beyond doubt that the former Chief of the Air Staff lied to the then Defence Secretary about her case. The Prime Minister says he believes in righting wrongs, so will he meet with Lizzie and help ensure that those responsible do not just walk away and that Lizzie gets the justice that she so very much deserves?
I thank her for raising what is obviously a very important case, and she's right to do so. I'm not across the individual details of it, but it obviously does need to be looked into. So we will commit to look into it, and I will make sure that she gets a meeting with the relevant minister to lay out such details as she has and to get some answers as to our inquiries.
Jake Richards.
Mr. Speaker, children's social care in this country is now in crisis. Vulnerable children are regularly placed hundreds of miles from home, often in unregulated and unsafe accommodation. Meanwhile, private companies are making record profits on the backs of struggling and desperate local authorities. Frankly, this is an issue, a national scandal, that doesn't get enough attention. Today, Mr. Speaker, I'll be presenting my private member's bill, which will offer modest reform in this area. But will the Prime Minister reassure me and thousands of families across the country that it is a priority of his government to fix the social care crisis and our family courts?
Well, I thank him for raising this issue and being a champion on it. He is absolutely right about the appalling inheritance. 1 in 4 children in absolute poverty. That's a terrible inheritance. And too many vulnerable children in unregulated accommodation. Through our Children's Wellbeing Bill, we will put children and their wellbeing at the heart of education and social care systems. We'll also provide a home for all young care leavers to ensure that they're not homeless and remove the barriers to opportunity so every child can thrive in safe and loving homes.
There's only just one tiny little problem with this, as much as I agree with this, with the need to ensure that all these children have their home, and that is the lack of housing and the struggles that councils are going through. So this has to go in line with obviously the needs for more homes, and councils are already struggling as it is, and it has been stated in numerous reports as well. So that's a really important factor here. Social care shouldn't have been privatised, especially for kids. Absolutely. I couldn't 100% agree, Alistair. You know, these companies at the end of the day, they don't give a damn about kids in any way, shape or form. At the end of the day, it's all about profit margins for them. It always has been about that.
Mr. Speaker, during the election campaign, the now Prime Minister made a hell of a lot of promises, some of which I'm sure he will remember. Of particular importance to my constituents in Andover, North West Hampshire, was a promise made on the 18th of June during a campaign visit to Basingstoke, when he made an unequivocal, unconditional commitment to rebuild our local hospital.
Where do you think this is going? Where do you think this is going, guys?
Mr. Speaker, is this a promise on which we can rely?
Mr. Speaker, firstly, I'm grateful to him for raising this because it's obviously of huge importance to his constituents and his right to do so. We are reviewing, as he knows, the programme. The programme that the last government put in place for 40 new hospitals had a number of flaws. They weren't all hospitals, they weren't new, and they weren't funded, so we're reviewing it. But what I will... No, but he's right to raise this, and I will make sure that he has a meeting with the relevant minister to discuss the particular development in his constituency. It will matter to his constituents who are listening to this, and it's important they know where the failure lay.
I do like that little jab there. You know, the Conservatives should not. They should expect to get a drubbing whenever it comes to hospitals. You know, they have to stick their head in the sand, knowing that the 40 new hospitals that they were promised. That was the thing that they were promised. That was the things that they were told by that the Conservative government had told. They never got that.
Mr. Speaker, I welcome the government's historic investment in carbon capture and storage technology for Teesside and Merseyside.
I don't welcome it. I think it's a disgrace. I think it's a disgrace to continue to continue to carry on with natural gas and just to store it and just to hide it underground, and hopefully it never comes out again, rather than actually investing more in solar, wind, and hell. I don't approve of it, but if we have to go nuclear to avoid using natural gas, then hell, I'd rather go for that than producing something that you can stick underground that could still leak and still produce emissions on the planet. It's a stupid idea, it's a stupid policy, and it's a waste of money, an absolute complete total bloody waste of money that could be used elsewhere. £22 billion they've invested in this carbon capture bollocks is what this is. This is a stupid decision by the government.
This week I've been at the sector's conference, and the feeling there is that this is a government delivering after years of delay. Will the Prime Minister recognise the unique potential that Teesside has for jobs, prosperity and economic growth into the future?
Yes, and Mr. Speaker, you will have observed that on Monday we had a very successful investment summit, £63 billion coming into this country, jobs in every part of the UK, and a very clear message from business that they were prepared to invest now under this new Labour government.
That's not what I heard from one of the business investors. They said you guys have to reduce red tape for them, because obviously we don't have the same leverage that we used to have, because, oh, what's that? We're not part of the EU single market anymore. So we don't have the same strengths that we had before. So that means we have to deregulate a little bit more, in order to encourage these businesses to invest in global Britain, as you like to put it.
Part of that was £22 billion commitment to CCUS, creating the first clusters in the world, including, as he points out, in the various parts of the country. So
they have always failed. Pretty much 90% of carbon capture projects like that, like the one he's talking about, have never succeeded. They've have pretty much always looked to fail.
We'll support these jobs, we'll support these investment, we will grow our economy, rebuild our country.
Yeah, it's Akismad saying carbon capture will generate a lot of money for the rich. Yeah, it gives them an excuse or allow them to continue. That those who produce, the companies that supply natural gas, gives them an excuse to keep going. It's an excuse to keep them going, because all they're going to say is, well, look, we're doing our part. We're not allowing it emissions into the air. We're storing it underground. Yeah, but it's going to leak. You can't just hide the problem. Don't hide the problem. Don't move the problem. Stop the problem. Stop the issue. We don't need it. We've got to change the status quo. And that's the problem. The politicians are too much influenced by oil and gas companies these days. Far too many of them. Far too many. And they're continuously pushing down the need for these changes that needed. Where in Ireland, that's full of wind. Okay, we don't always have the sunniest of days. That's true. Yeah, but we can build plenty of battery stations, for the energy grid, for wind and solar. And if we have to build 1 or 2 nuclear plants, then so be it. But we need to stop this oil and gas. We have to change the tide on this.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. North Cornwall is an amazing place to live and work, but a top-down approach from Westminster has failed us. Public services are chronically underfunded, young people forced to move away to pursue careers elsewhere, and affordable housing is a promise that's simply never kept. Will the Prime Minister meet with all 6 Cornish MPs to discuss devolution for Cornwall, with a Cornish Assembly that recognises our unique culture, language and national minority status, so we can finally unleash Cornwall's economic potential?
Not sure if he's going to get the meeting that he wants, if I'm honest. I mean, obviously, I'm sure the Prime Minister will say, obviously, he wants to level up Cornwall just like any other place here. But definitely raised a few eyebrows with that question.
I'm grateful to member for raising this. I do believe in transferring power out of Westminster and into the hands of leaders who know their communities best. Those with skin in the game know what's best for their communities. We are already making steps in the southwest by signing the devolution agreement for Devon and Torbay. Absolutely encourage local authorities to work with their neighbours to pursue deeper and wider devolution for their area, and I'll make sure that he has the meeting that he's asking for.
Final question, Blair McDougall.
As the Prime Minister works for a ceasefire and the return of the hostages, he'll have the support of people across this House. The Prime Minister will have noted the comments from the White House calling for urgent action to deal with the humanitarian crisis in Gaza and for the Netanyahu government to increase access to aid and to the amount of aid getting through. I wonder, does the Prime Minister agree with the comments from the White House and can he tell us what representations he is making on this matter?
Yes, I do agree with those remarks, and we are constantly making representations on this with our partners. There is an urgent need, and has been now for a very long time, for more aid to get into Gaza. It's a desperate situation, and Israel must comply with its international humanitarian law obligations, and that is why we are convening a session of the the UN Security Council with others to address this issue.
Right, that completes Prime Minister's question. I'll just let the front benches clear a bit.
Yeah, he did say that was the last question. Okay. Surprised there was no SNP were allowed to speak in that one. Not even one SNP. You had two from Plaid Cymru on Welsh issues there, but not one SNP spoke. I don't know if any of them stood up. I know Stephen Flynn was sitting on the side there, so I'm assuming that he was quite late when he came in. Maybe that was just me. But no SNP's got to speak. I'm quite surprised we didn't hear at least from one MP from Prime Minister's questions. But we heard from the Greens. Reform weren't. We heard from one Green as well. So some of the questions there I thought were. I think the questions between Sunak and Keir, while important at times, I just felt like there was a bit more of agreement and cohesiveness between the two. I mean, Sunak is just kind of just letting the things flow until he can finally go. It's going to be very weird seeing Robert Jenrick or Kemi Bakanock up there as the opposition leader of the Conservative Party. I really hope it's not Kemi, because I just think Kemi is just going to be so arrogant and so full of herself if it is. But I'm very much noticing that it was just like on that. But some of the issues and some of the things that were raised I thought were very good, and his responses were pretty cohesive. Obviously, reminding people about the Conservatives' 14 years I think is very, very important as well on that. Just have a quick look what you guys are saying in the chat before we go. I notice there's more contempt from Westminster as to Keir. Akisman says, store all the carbon gas under Westminster. Mad Monk says you can't do that as Westminster is already full of toxic gas bags. Yeah, it's already full. You can't put any more in there. If you do, you'll blow up Westminster. And yeah, we don't like. I understand people want Westminster gone, but I don't want the building to blow up. Especially with people in it. If I'm honest. Independent Cornwall will be nice. They will kick out all second homeowners and move Cornish back, says Jeannie Bottle. An independent, so I'm assuming there's some kind of independence movement down in Cornwall that I'm not aware of. That does, I know there's obviously an independence movement up in the north of England there. That certainly was the impression that I was getting from that question. That's for sure, Jeannie Bottle. The cement used to cabin wells degrades over time, especially under the sea, says Super Tiny. As Kelso says, carbon capture is hiding it for maybe 10 years, as REGANELITE stated it will leak out again. It will leak out again. You're just hiding the problem. You're not stopping the problem. You're just hiding the problem. That's exactly what it's going to do there. Right, guys, I will be back at 8 o'clock with the Snowflake Watch tonight. We'll be covering some news and politics from the UK, maybe even some stuff over in Gaza as well. I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone who's come along here for Prime Minister's questions. Thank you guys for all your comments. Really greatly appreciated as well. I'm not sure if I'm still going to. I'm not sure if I'm going to do a live stream at all tomorrow. For those who haven't actually, I may not have noticed it, but my voice is really, really bad. Been bad this morning and in the evening, so I'm not sure. I might just completely leave Thursday night free. I might not even do Friday live stream because my voice is really struggling at the moment. Believe it or not. I blame the weather more than anything. Some people were saying it was the jet lag as well. I'm not sure about that, but I still have some content to do. I've recorded quite a bit this morning for you guys as well. But I will be back tonight at 8 o'clock for the Snowflake Watch, guys. And content has been done for Patreon and Rumble. excuse me, 12 p.m. as well on those as well. I just haven't put a post out for them, but they are there every day, Monday to Friday, on Patreon and Rumble. They are free to watch. You do not need to join Patreon to watch them. You can see them for free, so do check them out. The links for them are down in the description below, guys. So just before I go, if you haven't already, please hit the like button before you hit the like button. If you haven't already, it'd be greatly appreciated. Shares across social media so others are notified of this live stream. If you haven't subscribed already, please consider subscribing because it really does help support the channel. If you want to go one step further and financially support me and the work that I do here, you could do so by becoming a YouTube member for as little as 99p, or you can join me on Rumble or Patreon for exclusive content on those platforms. So thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to catch you all very, very soon.